Hi, good afternoon. Welcome all. Samakor is happy to bring this webinar to you under our knowledge sharing services. Samakor is a Qatar registered entity jointly promoted by Sama International Projects, Doha, and Continuity and Resilience India. Our speakers today are from three different countries: Qatar, so Qatar, UK, and India. We plan to bring such events to you on a regular basis and look forward to your active participation. I'll make a brief introduction of our esteemed speakers. Mr. Abdul Latif Al Yafai, he's the 2018 recipient of the Business Continuity Personality Middle East Award. He's the Executive Director, Public Services at United Development Company, and he's currently the chairperson of BCI Qatar Forum. Mr. Damandev Sood, over 35 years in the industry, he holds a mixed experience as a practitioner, trainer, and a consultant. Daman is BCI approved instructor and has over 16 years experience in BCM and related domains. He is an associate fellow of the BCI. Mr. John Robinson, he's based out of UK. He's a fellow of the BCI and has been a practitioner of business continuity for more than 30 years. He founded Inoni 15 years back, an organization delivering business continuity capability, automation, and expertise. Sheikh Abdul Qadir is the Chief Information Security Officer of Capco and previously Chief Technology Security Officer with Vodafone Qatar. He's a cyber security expert who has over 20 years experience of implementing secure technology solutions based on business needs. Uh, Now, general rules of the webinar are that all participants will be on listen only mode. In case you have questions, we request you to write the same in the question chat window. We will address most of them during the last 15 minutes of the webinar, which we have reserved for the Q&A session. In case you're not able to address some due to reasons, paucity of time, we would write back with answers very soon. Without further ado, I would request first speaker, Mr. Abdul Latif, to start the session. Over to you, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to participate in this webinar talking about the BCM challenges during the new normal in Qatar. I will start my slide first to walk you through that as per Business Security Institute report that issued in 2016, the epidemic was not one of the first 10 threats that mentioned in the report at that time. And however, this of course shows us how quickly risk can be transformed into a disaster, which highlights the need for a business continuity plan to deal with such things and to recover the business. As shown here, number one was highlighted as the cyber security, followed by all the way until the 10th is the health and safety. Of course, talking about health, the epidemic was not one of those matters. So this is clearly shows we are dealing with a new thing that's happening to the whole world. And we will prove during this webinar and also from the experience we had that those organizations who had business continuity plans in place believe they suffered less than those who did not. Moving to the next slide, in addition to the serious, of course, effects of people health due to the coronavirus, of course, there are many consequences of the corona on businesses, and on industrial and the economy and trade. And companies in different sectors. So this introduces negative impact on those companies. And as shown here on this list, for example, one of the main issues, new challenges arise for the business environment that call for a thoughtful, programmatic approach, where now companies started, the work environment has changed dramatically compared to before Corona. Nowadays, if you are going to your work, you will be received by the security, checking your, measuring your temperature, checking, of course, the Ihtiraz application. When you get into the elevator, there are 2 or 4 people are allowed to use the elevator. Also, within the work offices, you will have offices that are apart. So there are challenges, the changes in the environment of the office itself. One of the negative impacts also affected the cash flow of small and medium enterprises. Of course, large companies were affected. However, those small and medium were affected because of the changing of working hours. Also, they were not able to provide their services, which led some of them to bankrupts or difficult to continue because of the cash flow issues. The third one is the exposed to more cybersecurity risks. This is, of course, my colleague Sheikh will be talking about cyber security issues, but people started using mobile phones, started using the laptops to communicate, to conduct meetings, online meetings. So this introduces high risk to those this kind of applications. Also, there is an impact on the supply chain operations. As you know, the coronavirus impacted the whole supply chain, especially air and also sea shipment. So this has impacted many businesses around the world. Also, negative impact on the field of human resources, where many companies had to lay down some talented employees. So this has also impacted the business for those companies. And finally, it's also impacted employees' psychological and emotional well-being. And this has a great impact. Also, people, they are not like before. Moving also to the next slide, I thought to show you this example of the impact on the financial aspects. Of course, many companies had issues with their financials, revenues, and of course, ultimately impacted their net profit. Here in this graphs, you can see the horizontal line shows the degree affected by COVID-19, and the vertical line shows the financial risk on those organizations. And the round circles, the bigger circle is that means the bigger or the higher manpower they have. I will give you an example. For example, looking at circle A, the black one here, it's accommodation and food services. You have many people working in this sector, and this sector is really was impacted, mostly impacted or affected by Corona, and at the same time is the most affected in terms of financials. Another example is the healthcare and social assistant as letter G. Also this one, large sector in the terms of number of employees and most affected by Corona pandemic, but the least financial losses. Another example, final example, is the construction sector, and it's referred as letter D. It's one of the largest, of course, sectors in terms of number of employees and the average impact of the Corona pandemic, but the most affected in terms of financial losses. Having said the above, talking about the state of Qatar, Alhamdulillah, here in the state of Qatar, of course, the businesses and companies were affected in all sectors, but taking into consideration the support given by the government of the state for those companies based on the directives of His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, many companies were able to continue, and this, of course, continues the economic development and to enable the completion of strategic projects related to infrastructure and the World Cup 2022. Now, with no treatment for our vaccines for the coronavirus so far, people start talking about the terminology of a new normal. So this one here, I listed a few things that or elements or practices that part of the new normal that we are expecting. Actually, we are living right now this this situation. Number one is working from home. Of course, this is for me it's a new thing, but also for many staff, they had to work from home. This is, of course, to save their health. Also, by default, indirectly, introduces savings and on cost also. And this is one of the things can be thought of and might continue in for some sectors where you can work from home. You minimize, for example, the cost of rental, cost of assets, and others. So this is going to be, I think, working from home, one of the major practices that will be for the coming years. Also, the second one is social distancing. We had to, having a limited number of staff working from office was quite essential, of course, to ensure the distance between staff was maintained. So this is one of the things that I think people will keep or will continue having such distance everywhere. Also, the travel restrictions. There were, of course, many travel restrictions. Many airplanes were not able to travel, and also now imposing this quarantine, 14 days quarantine for whoever who will travel. So this is also impacting the whole situation. People will reduce, especially businesses, will reduce the travel for business purposes. Also, the communications to all impacted staff and the stakeholder, regular communication to staff impacted due to the outbreak. Always we receive updates from HR, from management on a new thing. So there will be close communication within the companies and the sectors. Also, additional cleaning procedures now has been introduced because of the COVID-19, and we believe this will continue. Of course, there will be some financial consequences or impact. Again, PPE rules and secure the supply and disposal is one of the issues. We had some issues in the beginning of the corona, but now everything is available. But manpower will continue using masks, hand gloves, and they have to maintain clean surfaces everywhere you go through the organization. Wellness checks every day. Of course, this is very important. People nowadays very sensitive. Once they have high temperature, they immediately think about corona. They have risk. They go and check. They go to hospital for corona test and so on. And this will continue, of course. And finally, business plans will be very important. And I believe organization now will look into this very seriously to have business plans in place. And of course, epidemic will be one of those business plans for all organizations.
Mr. Abdul Latif, we are nearly done with the time.
I'm almost, I need 1 minute. I'm concluding my presentation with this slide. So what we need to do is continue to contribute to the government stakeholders and community by sharing best practices and business know-how. This is very key and is needed within the community of businesses in Qatar. Of course, we have to ensure health and safety of all employees and reach the lives of community. Continue analysis and risk associated with infrastructure. Cybersecurity is very key for us. Workforce, operations, internal and external communication, etc. Using technologies or technical capability to support innovation and less reliance on physical spaces. And finally, assess and revamp existing business continuity plans, objectives, strategies. This is very important. And finally, change is inevitable. Change is always for the better or progress. And I think change for us now is the new normal. By this, I end my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. And I now will move to my colleague, Daman, to present his session. Thank you very much.
Mr. Damandev Sood.
Thank you very much. I hope you can see my screen and you can hear me. Someone to respond, please.
Yes, we can hear you.
All clear? Thank you very much. I wish to touch upon these 4 points quickly. We have very limited time. But before I actually start talking, I need to ask some questions. First of all, I'm going to ask you, this is with respect to your organizations, not with respect to you individually. How prepared was your organization for facing or managing COVID-19 pandemic? I hope you can see it on your screens, and I request you to cast your vote now, please. Only 40% people have voted so far. Few more seconds. While we are not even touching 90% votes yet. Okay, I'm stopping here. I hope you can see the results also. 13% saying they were very well prepared and they had BC plan or pandemic plans and had tested those plans also. Large population, 54% is saying well prepared. Ultimately, we manage it well. So I hope you understand the difference in the responses also. 33% saying not prepared, but we managed it well. As expected, no one going to the fourth option. Second question in front of you now. What percentage of your work happened from home during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic? And again, you have 4 options. I hope you can see it now, and I request you to cast your votes now, please. We request your active participation. Second question is a bit better than the first one with respect to your participation. Thank you very much. In a few seconds, I'll stop it. And your responses results in front of you. 48% saying they were 100% able to do from home. 26% saying up to 70%, 75% of the work happened from home. 22% in the third category, 25 to 50% of the work happened from home. And only 4% saying that less than 25% happened from home. So we see, if you look at the first two categories, we'll touch about 70% happening from home. And many organizations actually have claimed also that perhaps up to 100% happened from home. Let's keep this finding in your mind. And we move on to the third one. If everyone is claiming that they work from home, there was no change, right? Business happened, continued to happen. Then the question comes to mind, so is BCM dead? We don't need it now anymore? Launching third poll. And request your active participation. First question was about 60%, second question 75%. We look forward to 90% this time. And the results in front of you. 8% saying BCM is dead. Not surprising, 75% saying no. I believe most of us in the session are BCM professionals, so we would like to believe that it's not that dead. But 17%, which is, I would say, significant number, saying can't say also. Thank you very much for your participation. A quick look, we believe BCM is not dead. We still need to continue with BCM. About 12 steps in journey, starting from BCM is a program. If you start once, you need to continue forever. Policy is one of the first steps that shows the commitment of the top management also. Everyone is responsible for BCM, so everyone needs to be trained also according to the roles, responsibilities, and authorities. The core of the program, BIA, if your BIA is good, your BC plan will be good, or your BC plan will be as good as your BIA, followed by risk assessment. Not going into debates whether BIA first or RA first. Some other time we'll have that discussion also. Creating BCM strategies based on BIA and RA, and ultimately the CEO's wish list being fulfilled only in the 7th step, that BC plan is ready. But having plan is not enough, that needs to be tested also to ensure its adequacy, currency, effectiveness, etc. Certification or external audit is not mandatory, but internal audit is mandatory, which is number 9. And at least once a year review. Maintenance, because people would change, technology would change, processes would change, standards could change. Management review, once again, at least once a year recommended frequency. And overall continual improvement, that PDCA cycle of continual improvement needs to be implemented in BCM also. If someone, especially the big bosses or the clients or the CEOs saying, show me the BC plan tomorrow morning, one could show them it's a long journey and it's a continuous journey as well. Quickly from the standard ISO 22301, 2019 version, benefits of implementing BCM, how does it help, why should we do it? If we had any doubts, it talks about in 4 different perspectives. There are some benefits from business perspective, and there are some benefits from financial perspective, also from interested parties perspective, and from internal processes perspective. So there is a value in implementing BCM. This is how we would claim directly based on what is written in the 2019 version of ISO 22301. So next question, which is perhaps the last topic I wanted to touch upon. What's next then? Way forward. If we manage COVID-19 somehow, good, bad, or ugly, whether in first category, 100% or 50 to 75%, something like that, We need to move to a place which is known as organizational resilience. From BCM, our journey way forward is to achieve organizational resilience, which quickly is defined as the ability of an organization to absorb and adapt in a changing environment. So if you look at the figure, BCM in the center, that's the biggest wheel, but there are many other wheels, all put together, all need to work together, and then move towards the objective of the organization. In my own way, saying organization is an orchestra. Each department, each unit is a piece which played in isolation make good music, but when they are played in sync, they make a soothing sound that is good to ears. And by the way, BC manager is that conductor of the orchestra. A lot of coordination in the program needs to be done, which is done by the BC manager. If you look at this chart quickly, the attempt is to show that everyone plays a role in this. When all put together, all work with the help of BCM coordination, then we move towards the objectives of the organization, which will be mostly financial, but they may be non-financial objectives also. Going back to COVID-19 quickly, key players, people, definitely all employees were involved. It was people issue. So HR comes into picture. Facilities were locked, but we had to have alternate facilities which became our houses. IT had to make those provisions. Because of that, working from home, there are some legal issues also. Legal came into picture. Nothing comes free in this world. Finance would have to play a role. And as earlier speaker also said, communication very important during BAU, but during BCM, during crisis, its importance increases many folds. So a strong, continuous communication very important. So who all need to work when we are moving from BCM to the organizational resilience portion? All relevant interested parties. This diagram, very good diagram, showing about 30 different types, not 30 numbers, 30 different types of interested parties, and all of them need to work together. In the interest of time, I have been running fast, but please look at this diagram and then build your BCM program, making use of these interested parties and make it good. This is where I would like to stop. Thank you very much. And we look forward to questions at the end of the session. I pass it on to our colleague, John, now, please.
Good day, everyone. Greetings from the UK. I'm John Robinson. I'm going to just share my slideshow with you. It's coming. Share the screen first, I'm sorry. And slideshow.
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let me just get rid of that. Excellent. Again, I can start now. Thank you so much. We are a UK-based partner of Samacore, and we provide resilience and risk automation. Here in the UK, we have many customers obviously affected by COVID-19, and right the way through the development of the pandemic, we wrote a number of blogs trying to anticipate and help. Some of them are far-sighted, and one or two of our customers used these, and I'm going to give you a brief case study of how this actually worked. This is taken from one of those blogs, and it actually reflects the comments of Mr. Abdul Latif and also Daman just now. Could you have planned? And many people have said so far that they feel they could have planned. Others, I think, would have found it more difficult. Was there anything we could do? In some cases, we've even found that beneficiaries of the pandemic, people in the pharma sector who produce masks and gels, they were still faced with a crisis, but of a different kind. The fact is, they're all linked by the uncertainty of a very uncoordinated and often very politicized global response. The fact is our situations are various and different, but they're all linked by this. So business continuity and crisis management plans can be very adaptive. And those that are, and when they're adapted very well, they can be extremely efficient. And I actually found that particularly for office-based organizations, this has been, it's almost business as usual for many, for ourselves, for example, but for others that we work with, it's been extraordinarily difficult. So in this study, I'm just going to show you one example of this, and also an approach that we use to try to fill the gap left between business continuity crisis management and the problems that pandemic gave us. So the organization in question is a large company. I guess it turns over half a billion dollars, but it imports fruit from all over the world, particularly South Africa and Spain into the UK. And naturally, a lot of it is carried by land and crosses many borders. And each jurisdiction it goes through, it faces a different set of issues to cross those borders. There are also issues within the actual operation to do with very people intensive in some places. We also had Brexit to contend with, and many of the people were from Europe. They face extremely intolerant customers. A lot of them are supermarkets, high street supermarkets. Most of the high street supermarkets in the UK use this company to provide their fruit. Some of them, they are the sole supplier. So very, very sensitive demand. And in some cases, demand increased by 30% because all the restaurants had shut. So they're faced with a very uncertain supply chain. So bringing fruit from South Africa, which is faced itself with a very difficult situation. Plus they have to transport it. Plus they then have to get it to the shops when transport systems are badly affected. The fact is that complexity is normal for this organization. They're used to this kind of difficult situation, but the effect of coronavirus on them was to really intensify this and load them very heavily with a much greater rate of change. As the politicians were changing their views from day to day, it became extremely difficult for them. And this was across multiple jurisdictions. So you had the operational effects of people not being there, supply chain impacts, plus political impacts and economic impacts. So their situation, the thing they faced is, I guess, what many, I would say mostly producers, people that have a physical activity to complete, factories, food retailers, people that have to be there to do this, they faced one or more of these things: poor information, high levels of disruption, continual change, and very financially exposed. There's no insurance for this. So they really are left wide open. What particularly this organization found was that the systems they had in place, so enterprise risk management, it's kind of almost a year look ahead. It's quite a, it's not a response, it's not designed to be responsive. BCP, they had a pandemic plan, but the plan wasn't designed to adapt to exactly this situation. It didn't help them look forwards. Crisis management, yes, they had all the machinery there, the people with the education, all the data, everything, but it didn't really help them deal with the actual operational situation. So they're left not knowing what's coming next. Most crises are developing, but this one is developing over months, possibly years. So there is a clear gap in their defenses, and none of the specialized risk management systems or tools that we had provided them with were really designed to deal exactly with this situation. Now, I've been through SARS previously in this country and prepared for a previous pandemic. This was so different, so different, very hard to anticipate. What they in fact needed, and we had the discussion with them, was a forward-looking adaptive planning mechanism that minimized their exposure. So that's where we took this next. So the plan was really, as it says on this slide, accept that normality has changed and will continue to change, probably very unpredictably. But key to this is to set a direction. Where do you think the new normal is? You have to get out of this jungle somehow, and you have to proceed in one direction somehow. You need to know where you're going. From then, scan the horizon. in the new direction. Look at what you face as you move forward with short, mid and long-term views on emerging and present risks. Third, having done that horizon scan, analyze what you find in those different areas and adjust your direction and make the tactical improvements. Mitigate the risks that you face, that you can see coming. And for them, it was things like when they closed the border with France for a while, they couldn't import via the normal routes and they had to find others. So they would task someone with doing particular aspects of risk mitigation and then repeat these points more often than the apparent rate of change. And that means you kind of zigzag your way towards the new normal. So what we did to do this, to facilitate it, we used a simple layered business model that we always use in business continuity, but we used it to generate a checklist, and it looks like this. So each layer that you can see, and the layers are down the left-hand side, stakeholder, product and service, financial, and so on, each of them contains assets. It's kind of a characterization of the things in the organization, and it's like a layer cake. You need all of the layers to be intact to operate acceptably. And it's a really good check. Do we have everything that we need in place? So we would look at the individual assets. The other columns in the list, risk, prepare, and recover, they represent checklists. One is the list of risks that we face, so a risk register, specifically for the risks that they face during this situation, emerging risks, not static ones, new things facing them. Immediately, daily, we would create a list of things that we needed to do, preparations, and what we would do if that risk was actually realized. So improvements, defenses, recovery plans. So a very proactive and forward-looking mechanism. Incredibly simple. We used this sheet of paper. We really used this sheet of paper for the first 4 or 5 iterations of it. And we would do this daily, sometimes twice daily. Now it's out to weekly, but still using the same mechanism. On top of this, we actually quantified the risks. So they had numbers, we knew what they were worth. So we didn't use heat maps. We literally used, we think this will cost us £1 million. And we used it and estimates of likelihood to prioritize and generate key performance indicators, including returns on investment if we had to spend money. Frankly, it covers everything, every piece of the business. It tells them where to look, where to worry. And as I said, it was updated pretty much daily. We looked at this very carefully and automated. So we used our existing system, which is effectively a risk register. We used the quantified data. We push the risks into the risk register. We do the calculations with them. You can see completion, impact contribution, likelihood contribution, and you can see there's actually a maximum risk reduction column in there. And the risks you can see on the second column in, produce the farm closure for 3 months, schedule stakeholder update conference calls. All kinds of different risks in this list. What it did, it gave them a focus. They could see, and it's now being looked at as a valuable peacetime technique for general risk management and certainly for linking to crisis management. So it's been a very instructive exercise. My last slide. I wrote these questions a while ago, and I think they're really good things to think about. I think Mr. Abdulatif and Daman have already touched on these. How effective was your plan? Daman certainly covered that. Do you know what the new normal will look like? Have you actually tried to work out where you're headed? And how and when will you get there? How long will it take? Really difficult questions, very, very difficult. But the one thing I would like you to think about after this presentation, which I'm almost through with, all the established risk disciplines are the basis for my entire career. They're extremely valuable, but they don't seem to deal well with all aspects of COVID. Some businesses, yes. Okay, got it. So that's my timer. And similar events, there is clearly a gap. Now, the thing I just described, it's a very common sense approach. It fills this gap and it deals with all kinds of developing situations, fast changing, unpredictable, developing. And this automation is already built into Samacor and ONI projects. The things that we do have this capability within them. And I now believe it's a very relevant piece of capability and functionality, and particularly relevant for COVID and risk in general. that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. I'm now going to pass you on to Sheikh to complete presentations. Stop.
Thank you very much, John. I hope you guys can hear me well.
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, good. Hi, this is Sheikh Abdul Khadir. I'm actually talking about cybersecurity. Speaking at the last is actually an advantage that all the groundwork has been done by my fellow panelists. I think the message has been set and it's clear what we are talking about. Okay, quick introduction is basically what I want to emphasize is on from the cybersecurity perspective, as Mr. Abdul Latif has already mentioned in the very beginning, saying that cybersecurity is one of the biggest risks when all this pandemic has happened, while the human risk is definitely an element which has affected the most to every human. So from what has happened on the cybersecurity is what we're going to discuss in the next couple of minutes. And also I would like to bring some best practices and share some of those remedies, how we can tackle the cybersecurity perspective. So this is what I'm going to talk about. One key information which I want to tell you, probably this is one of the biggest technological transformation ever happened in a very shortest period of time in the human history. So that's the one emphasis which I want to give you in terms of the magnitude of the problem. Just to show you the dynamics in terms of what has changed, Facebook, Google have even extended to the end of year and probably are looking at changing this work from home culture as part of their business. Another important factor is that the permanent shift is happening towards home working. This is what The Guardian in its report predicts. And also India's biggest technological company, TCS, is considering to have it 75% of its workforce of 450,000 workforce permanently work from home by 2025. The unexpected catalyst is for these technological adaptation, because one of the, on the lighter side, people share this poll in terms of which has been the biggest, transformation catalyst. So it has mentioned that COVID has been outperformed when it comes to CEOs and CFOs when it, in terms of the technological adaptation. Cyber physical system has been accelerated, which gives you the cybersecurity aspects more physical, more personal, because now because of this social distancing norms, you're using more robots to interface and interact with humans, which could be hacked and could potentially have some repercussions on human lives. So that's a point which I want to say. Now, just because I would like to give a little disclaimer here. What I'm actually presenting is a very simplified version and a non-technical version for this audience. This actually is well detailed, and probably you can check this slide in my LinkedIn page if you have access. Otherwise, somebody from this panelist will share you at the end of this presentation. So to give you a number, just to show you the magnitude of this problem, is there is a 5% increase, or 5 times or 500% increase in the cyber attacks on the perimeter and cloud infrastructure. When I say cloud infrastructure, it's basically where the users are now. So imagine if there are 500 times of increase of cyber attacks on the perimeter and the cloud infrastructure, what is this impact on an unprotected system which is now being part of the 90% of the access that is coming in. So I'm just taking up this data which Daman has shared, and also it has been globally confirmed that there's 90% of the work from home has happened during this pandemic time. And also the very interesting fact is that 667 increase in emails, or which are phishing using some kind of brand impersonation, blackmailing, BEC, and scamming. Google alone has blocked about 18 million emails per day to its Gmail users. Even so, this is, since the statistics are still not available as it is forming, by the end of the year, you will get a much clearer picture. There are about 500,000 registration of new domain names containing words related to coronavirus or COVID as a pretext, which is used to target users, saying that it is to scam the users. The point here which I'm trying to make is that, yes, cyber attack trends, the trends, and every organization, if you monitor, and also if you get some global statistics, there has been unprecedented amount of attacks on the infrastructure. Since this new perimeter has been almost dissolved in this, so the protection has reduced, the barriers have collapsed, so which means that several data could have been potentially compromised. So what I'm going to discuss is what are the 7 security best practices on the COVID during this new normal, as my fellow panelists have mentioned earlier. First thing that everybody has to look at into their information security policies to see the altered dynamics which has happened, because many of our information security policies are not in par with the work culture that is changed. So if you look at the policies and procedures need to factor remote working, impact on data privacy, protection, and security. And also the incident response plans and protocols might become obsolete and need to be adjusted to this. And roles and responsibilities. Previously, the roles and responsibilities were very organization-centric, but if you look at this, now you have more and more users and suppliers outside your perimeter, outside your organizations who are part of this, and those roles and responsibilities had to be defined. Conducting a walkthrough and obviously managing, the crisis management. CISO should be part of the crisis management and has to be playing a significant role in the organization. That's point number 1. 2 is very important, probably for a non-technical audience. It is very simplified. A purpose-based VPN or remote access has to be provided based on trusted, which is your employees, semi-trusted, who are your partners who are working remotely, and finally untrusted, who are your users or end users or your customers. So this is a very important. There are several ways of doing it, which can be discussed at later when we get a chance and a question and answer. Protecting phishing scams. Now that you have so many of phishing scams that are happening, it is important that the phishing scams, your phishing rules have to be optimized to consider either Office 365, G Suite that has been adopted, including some Slack and other areas which are the new thing as a part of the new norm. Shifting towards data-centric protection is the best way to handle this, because now that the perimeter is dissolved and it is blurring as we go ahead, so it is better to invest all your energy to protect the data from its core where it matters. The 5th practice, which I would say, is the securing the endpoints. So previously, as you know, we were securing our endpoints within an organization, but the endpoints have now gone beyond the perimeter. It's important that the home PCs, because in this situation, many people do not have enough laptops or systems to be distributed to the users and corporately managed. So this brings a new dimension or a new attack vector, as it is called in our language, to your data. So how do you secure those endpoints? Some of those practices are to even give activation their Windows operating system or the operating system which they are using, and as well as giving them an antivirus, and as well as giving them some best practices. And needless to mention that you need to train them, which I'm going to talk in this practice number 7. The conducting security awareness training is a very important aspect when it deals with remote workers, because the way they do business, the way they interact with each other has completely changed. The physical interaction has been almost eliminated in some cases. And then the only option is the technology, and then there are some protocols, and as well as some good hygiene or practices that needs to be managed. Tuning your security monitoring capabilities. The last practice, which I'm trying to manage my time, so I may be a little faster, just bear with me. So tuning security monitoring capabilities to expand the IT landscape. So as I mentioned previously, you had a layered control, defense in depth practices, which was laid on to protect your data and organizations and users from various cyber attacks. Now, in this new era, it is important that to consider monitoring of various different by using MDM and other tools. Okay, and I have managed my time, and over to you, my fellow panelists, for any question and answers. I can explain more about it.
I have a few questions. This one is for you, John. If we can have all the panelists on the screen now. So, John, the question is, can you elaborate a bit more on ERM unresponsive and not designed for this?
My understanding of ERM, I'm not an ERM expert, I would say, but enterprise risk management is a systemic approach. It's not necessarily intended to be a responsive or reactive approach to a major disruption in this way. It should ensure that you have practices in place because you've looked at it, predicted it, if you understand what it is you're trying to predict, and then you would have the mechanisms there to respond. I would argue that ERM is generally built as part of an extended program. It works on a long life cycle and steadily, systematically ensures that all aspects of risk are covered. It doesn't necessarily always predict what's coming. That's why I believe it's possible for things to fall through the gap that I mentioned between enterprise risk, crisis management, and business continuity. That's exactly what happened for the organization I'm talking about. They have an ERM program. It's not ours. It's another company provided it for them. But the BCM crisis management certainly needed something additional to deal with pandemic. It very much depends on the type of organization as well. I hope that answered the question.
I have a couple of questions for Sheikh. Should all companies start work from home? Do you think we can safeguard with these 7 practices? And can you elaborate more on data-centric protection? How does it differ from the current approach?
Right. So basically, a good question. When I say data-centric protection, I mean protecting your most important asset for the organization, like your crown jewels. By having a clear data discovery and classification, you should know what is that you're going to protect. Second is to build a zero trust IT environment to protect the data by limiting access. So when you have a zero trust environment, you mean that you will not trust anybody. All you need to, based on the trust level, you provide the access. This is 2. 3 is to have an identity and access management, ensuring the right people have the right access to information at the right time and the right resources. And 4, probably, which I can think of, is to protect with the help of CASB, because now that CASB is a cloud access security broker, which provides an access control, authentication, and analysis of data and user activity moving in and out of SaaS cloud services. So it's important to consider those aspects when your data is on cloud. And finally, adopt privacy by design, because privacy and data security cannot be at the end product of an SDLC. It has to be at every stage of the SDLC, and privacy by design has making this as a priority when designing new products. By that, a focus has to be shifted towards data-centric protection. Did I answer the question, or did I miss something?
Correct. And the second one was, should all companies start work from home? Do you think we can safeguard with these 7 practices?
Well, I think these are 7 proven best practices, which are a starting point, not the end. These has to be looked at from various aspects, differs from organization to organization. If you're working for a financial or a banking organization, the security aspects are different from something like an operation technology where you are working for manufacturing, and other things are different. So this is a good starting point, I would say. Well, this needs to be improved and adopted to various organizations, but as a principle, I think it's a good study. As I said, it's a good practices which are proven in several industries.
Thank you. This one is for Daman. Daman, what are the new aspects added in BIA for pandemic situation, and is there any insurance for such types to save organizations from losses?
I'll answer the second part first. With respect to insurance, my immediate response would be yes, but if you ask details or particulars, then I will not be able to respond immediately. All learnings from this COVID-19 pandemic are not out yet. It's still on. The incident or the crisis is not over yet. So we need to explore a lot more, I believe, and we need to find out. Even if I want to find a solution, the insurance company has to provide a solution. They need to stay in business with more innovative, either new or existing products, change, modify to take care of this. So I believe, yes, that's what I know. At least from health insurance perspective, from some companies, from some countries, I know the government issued instructions that COVID-19 has to be taken care of in that insurance, health insurance that the people had purchased. Coming to the first question, BIA, whether any change in BIA parameters, I believe no. BIA, according to me, is independent of the cause. What has happened? It's independent of that. You're just discussing what is the analysis, what is the impact on your business if your process goes down due to any reason. This time the reason happened to be the COVID-19 pandemic. But yes, it's been a big event. So the good practice is you need to go back and review also. A review of your BIA, and by BIA only the full BCM program is suggested, is recommended at the end of this crisis. And again, it may continue for months and years. Pandemics run for months and years. So we do not know yet whether we are out of this in next 2 months or next 6 months, and whether we continue working from home for 6 months or 2 years, as fellow panelist was saying. We know some companies have announced up to 2 years also. Companies like TCS saying by 2025, only 25% of the people need to go to office. So perhaps this is continuing for long, and we need to look at all impacts, need to put all learnings together and then improve upon our BCM program. I hope I have answered.
I have time for 2 last questions. We have plenty of them, which we'll definitely revert on an email. This one, John, is more related to the BCM technology part. Too many technology changes like AI, ML, analytics, cloud. So how can BCM provide solid control practices or policies or procedures to maintain a good organization infrastructure resilience?
Just run that again. Tell me one more time, Aaron.
Yeah. So too many new technologies, changes like AI, ML, analytics, cloud. So how can BCM provide solid control practices or policies or procedures to maintain good organization infrastructure resilience?
I do have an approach that we use to try to cover everything. It works. It's exactly the approach I showed in the presentation. And it involves making sure you understand all of the interactions in the organization. And that can include physical, logical, human assets of the organization. It can also cover some of the aspects that Man just mentioned. Can you cover the whole BIA? It is in fact a model that it becomes the BIA, and you can model anything into it. So anything you rely on that can be given resilience capabilities, in other words, the ability to prevent, detect, defend, recover, any of these aspects, you can build it into the model. You can also stretch the model. So most of us right now, when we do a BIA, we probably stop at just one layer of stakeholder. The terrific list that Daman showed earlier, 30 different stakeholder types. Some of those types they're indirect. They're not people that you directly rely on. And what the pandemic has shown us is that it's no good stopping at the first level of dependency. You have to look right down the supply chain and right up through the market, because people that are indirectly affected can still affect you. So what this has meant is for BIAs is that their scope potentially should be larger, so we understand the effect. But the question really underpinning all of this is, could we do anything about it, even if we did really understand it? And in many cases, I think we can. I think the more we understand it, the better equipped we are to do the things that I said, and that is be proactive, to understand what's coming at us. To answer your, so to just finally answer your exact question, how do we deal with all the new aspects and make sure we have good organization, infrastructure resiliency? I believe that that piece of automation that I showed you, it takes that data model, the dependency model, and we build dependency models of organizations, building one as even now with a core client, and we have a very good graphic data model that goes into this system. And the risks on individual assets can be modeled, their position in the recovery, and so on. So I believe we can do all of this. We have the knowledge to do it. The man would like to say something.
No, I'm expanding that question, John, for you. The question is, perhaps my job is at risk. Artificial intelligence and robots will take over BCM jobs also. Yes or no? That's the question.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's on the screen. Too many technologies, AI, ML. How BCM can provide solid control practices. I was assuming they were the things we were trying to protect, not worrying that they were going to take our jobs. They'll never take our jobs. You know that.
I have time for one last question for Sheikh. With the increase in security risks and the need for several systems, which means a lot of investment too, to protect organizations, assets, and data, which will impact the organization revenues, how to balance that?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you repeat that question, Tarun? I missed a bit of that.
So I'll give a gist of the question, which basically means with the increased security risk and need for several systems to be put in place, which means a lot of infrastructure costs going into it to protect the data and stuff, which will impact the organization revenues. How do you balance it out? How do you justify that expense?
Excellent question. Actually, my favorite question. The fact is, this is my job. So this is what I do. It's a return on security investment. So how do you get a return on security investment? So everything that is affecting your risk needs to be controlled. So it's just not protecting data. It was also ensuring that your continuation of services, right? So ensuring the availability of the data when to the right user in the right time and the right place. So this, if that's a motive and IT is a core for certain businesses, it's important that the investment has to go in the right. So needless to mention that every organization needs to tune its spending. What is currently happening is that, as it is well known, that one suit fits all is not the way that everybody has to adopt. All you need to do is what applies to you, what is the data you're handling. If it is an organization which is handling a critical user data or something that is manufacturing industry is handling a critical process. So obviously they need to be having a higher level security for those which are just hosting a simple service for information. So it goes back to the previous explanation which I had given. It is important that the crown jewels are to be protected first. Treat the security based on trust level, treat the security and invest wisely on those aspects, then it can be justified your investment. Now it's no more, cybersecurity is no more an IT problem, it's a business problem. So then nobody can escape from investing on this. So that is how you sustain in business, and this is how you will have an edge in a period of time, that people will be and organizations will be rated based on your cybersecurity maturity. And it's no longer an option, because there is, particularly in Qatar, with the National Information Assurance Policy and as well as the FIFA cybersecurity framework has been mandated for several critical infrastructure organizations, which means it's no more an option. So everybody has to comply and protect the data.
That brings us to the end of our webinar. Naman, would you like to share the screen? Guys, thank you for your time. We want to thank everybody. All the unanswered questions will be replied by email. We'll write down to individual eminent panelists to reply to those questions, and we'll get back to you. Thank you, and keep a lookout. We'll be doing a lot of webinars, informative webinars on different topics related to security, risk, crisis, disaster, business continuity, and we hope to have the same participation. Thank you so much, and have a great evening ahead.
I request the panelists to stay on for a few seconds, please.
Sure.
Do you also want to come up, both of you? I'll take a photograph.
I've just taken it, sir.
You also coming? Karan?
Not set up for a picture right now.
Yes, no?
No.
All right, okay. I'll take one. You can smile, all of you, to the best of your capability. Thank you. We'll share the photograph with you also. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
We hope to do more.
We hope to do more.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.